we were in the midst of the great Canadian cull, right? The government is basically killing all the undesirables. There is no money for health care, appropriate health care in this country. We know that. We know we don't have enough doctors. We know we don't have money for a proper health care system because, over the last 8 years, a fortune has been squandered, but very little of it went to taking care of people. So now you've got all these people and all these problems, and you have a country that was put in lockdown and traumatized for a few years. You have a country which the inflation rate is going through the roof. You have a country basically on the brink of having to get involved in a third world war. You have people who can't afford gas, can't afford rent. But here we have a panacea to all of that, right? Well, we'll just kill them. Is with the vision, the creativity and the courage of the Delta Hospice Society that we fundraised $8.5 million. We built these buildings, beautiful buildings that you see here, and we have been running them for the last 10 years. So, the government now, the Fraser Health Authority, will step in, confiscate these buildings, expropriate them without compensation, and have themselves a nice little piece of real estate at our expense.
It's like mafia thugs just coming and taking it.
Yeah, you won't kill your patients? Okay.
Yeah.
We'll strip you of all of your assets.
Yeah.
It's not even a law. As long as there's access to in the community. Well, there's access right next door at the Delta Hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, they can slaughter them over there.
This is Dan Dix here, reporting for Press for Truth, and there is one Canadian government program that they truly excel at. The one thing that the Canadian government is really, really good at is killing people. In fact, the numbers are in for 2022. Over 45,000 Canadians took the Canadian government up on this offer for MAID, medical assistance in dying, or in other words, government-assisted suicides. And this number is showing no signs of slowing right now, as they are broadening the definition of who can be eligible for applying to this. We now have everyone from people who are suffering from poverty to drug addictions, taking the government up on this offer, and it's showing no signs of slowing. Now, if you are involved in the health field in any way and you are against this, you speak out against it, you are against the government killing of Canadian people, well, you can have your funds stripped from you and you can essentially be shut down. Well, joining me right now is Angelina Ireland. She has been fighting against MAID ever since the very beginning. So, Angelina, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us here again at Press for Truth. Now, the last time that we were talking about this, we were in your Delta Hospice building, which you helped raise over $8.5 million to get this, built. We are no longer there. Tell us where we are now and why we're here instead of there.
Hi, Jan. Thank you for having me here to speak with you today. Well, the Delta Hospice Society has been through the wars. This is a 30-year palliative care organization. We are a charity, a not-for-profit, and our greatest mission was to provide palliative care to people. Truly, authentic palliative care does not include euthanasia, MAID, assisted suicide, or anything else you want to call it. Authentic palliative care helps people live well, be it through physical, symptom control, psychological services, spiritual services, live well until their natural end. And the only thing really that the Delta Hospice Society wanted to do was fulfill its mission. And that became pretty impossible once MAID was brought into Canada. But let's start by saying that MAID is actually an amendment to the Criminal Code of Canada. An amendment which allows, I would call them agents of the state, be it nurses or nurse practitioners or doctors, to kill patients, and they call it non-culpable homicide. So that's where it starts. And really, the Delta Hospice Society didn't really want to have anything to do with it. What we wanted to do was just provide 10 palliative care beds in a sanctuary for the dying that we raised $8.5 million for to provide, and that was going to be impossible. So, we find ourselves out of the healthcare provided system. We find ourselves out of our 7,500 square foot palliative care facility, and we find ourselves basically in an underground bunker about 200 square feet, where we have to provide a voice for those who just want to be safe if they're ill, and want to access authentic palliative care services.
And this is all because you refused to go along with this killing program. You said, no, we're not going to get involved with MAID here. They can literally walk across the street and do this if they want to, but they still said, no, that's not good enough. And they shut you down. But that wasn't the end of it. There was a large push against you after that, right? Tell us a little bit about the government pushing back on you for speaking out against MAID and the activists who they sent after you as well.
Right. I mean, look, once the government had their way with us, right, then the activists came for us to whatever was left. And, fortunately, the Delta Hospice Society has assets, right? We're a 30-year organization, and over that time, we have accumulated assets. So the activists swooped in and wanted to take over the organization. They wanted to basically instill a hostile takeover to get those assets and use them for MAID advocacy.
Who are these? We're talking about activists for death. Who are these people?
Right. I mean, people like Dying with Dignity Canada. They're a large national organization that basically makes death look all pretty and nice and peaceful, and never once mentions that the drugs that they use in MAID are actually the same drugs that they use on death row. Right, when they execute criminals. They say it's so beautiful and peaceful. That's because the paralytics that are put in first. So basically a person is frozen, and they couldn't scream if they wanted to. As the poison comes in, the same death row cocktail that they use in death row killings, right? I mean, Canada doesn't use capital punishment anymore, but what we do is we made people.
Right, and they are, as I understand it, getting funding from the Canadian government to quite literally go after people like yourself who are simply standing out against MAID. How is this, fair? This is like, this is insane that they're coming after you to this extent simply for speaking out about MAID. Not only speaking out, but refusing to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we clearly get no money from the government, and quite frankly, we wouldn't accept any either. We don't want blood money. We have enough people that want the kind of services that we provide that will be just fine. So, what we are, though, is we have become, really a beacon for a resistance against MAID nationally. Our story went international. We continue to speak out against what we consider to be state-sanctioned execution of sick and vulnerable people. So for that reason, we were a target to try to shut us up and make us go away. So it came right down to a huge membership drive, ultimately, right? I mean, we're a membership-driven organization, and if they could get more members into our organization, they could overthrow, basically, the board of directors, kick anybody out that might oppose MAID, and then that would be one less obstacle, right? So, we had to fight them. We had to fight them nationally. They tried to get their people, so we had to get our people. And it's funny because the Delta Hospice Society is a very small community organization, maybe had 200 members. But after all of this kerfuffle, we ended up with 12,000 members going into an AGM to try to eliminate anybody who was against MAID.
And these are activists who infiltrated the organization in order to try to convince the board to oust you guys, right?
Yeah, they put up their own slate of board of directors to be voted on by the membership that they went out and tried to get to come into our organization. You know, what they didn't really, I think, expect was that we were going to do the same thing then. So we went out and we went across Canada and we asked people to support the kind of work that we were doing, to buy a membership and to come to the AGM when this sort of battle royale was to happen. So the day of the AGM came, there was over 5,000 participants, and we ended up winning 75% to 25%. So 75% of the people in attendance supported what we were doing, right? Supported that we should actually have a choice in the matter against MAID in Canada. And we changed our constitution and bylaws, and we became a purely palliative care organization that refused and prohibited any participation in MAID.
Now, they're on an absolute killing spree. Now, they've opened this up to people who are just suffering from poverty, people who are suffering from drug addictions, people who simply just can't afford the services that the Canadian government is not supporting for them, so they don't even necessarily want to die. But this just seems to be the better option because it's being pushed on these people, right? So can you talk a little bit about how it went from the Canadian government offering it to the Canadian government pushing it?
Yeah. You know, I say that MAID has become very predatory. There was a time when it first started, and this is how I think they got the mainstream involved, where they said, oh, it's just going to be rare. It's just going to be for those very few people, you know, who are basically on the brink of death, and we're just going to help them along a little bit, right? Very quickly, it became something that was mainstream and part of protocol, right? They weren't supposed to even bring it up to people. Now it's become a standard where you tell people, do you want to have MAID now, right? So that's a very clear difference. You know, I would say that, look, you have a group, let's say you have a group of animals, and you take out all the sick ones, and then you kill all the old ones, and then you kill the disabled ones, and then you kill the ones who aren't quite, you know, mentally, doesn't look quite as, you know, as like the best, right? You know what we call that? We refer to that as a cull. So now I say that we are in the midst of the great Canadian cull, right? The government is basically killing all the undesirables. There is no money for health care, appropriate health care in this country. We know that. We know we don't have enough doctors. We know we don't have money for a proper health care system because, you know, over the last 8 years, you know, a fortune has been squandered, but very little of it went to taking care of people. So now you've got all these people and all these problems, and you have a country that was put in lockdown and traumatized for a few years. You have a country which the inflation rate is going through the roof. You have a country basically on the brink of having to get involved in a third world war. You have people who can't afford gas, can't afford rent. But here we have a panacea to all of that, right? Well, we'll just kill them. You know, and this is how I see the power that we gave the government, the power to kill us. But we went with it in a very naive, and we were very overconfident that this power that we gave to the state would be used responsibly. And we see now that, in fact, that power is being used against the people. And we have become a country that kills the sick, kills the vulnerable, and there's very little pushback against the increase of this eligibility. You know, that we will have a time, and I do not think it's very far off, where parents will get a phone call and say that their child is in the morgue, go pick them up, because, you know, precocious children now, thanks to things like the Infants Act, can decide to not only sterilize themselves and mutilate themselves, they can now decide to euthanize themselves, right? So, you know, we have come into a situation where people had better start to speak out strongly, to try to protect themselves and their loved ones against state-sanctioned execution.
It's almost like they're trying to normalize eugenics, which is crazy to say that a government would engage in eugenics on a level publicly to this extent. But looks like that's exactly what they're doing, right?
You know, it feels like that. I mean, when this whole thing started, we knew that this was going to be bad, right? We knew that because of the reaction against us when we said we want to have a sanctuary for the dying, right? That these 10 beds, for example, they will not participate in euthanasia. You know, these are going to be 10 beds people can come to feel safe. But there was an intolerance even for 10 beds, right? In a province with thousands of beds. And not only was there an intolerance for that, but the backlash that came against us when we said we don't want to participate in that, right? I mean, I have personally been targeted. The organization was targeted because we said, no, thank you. You know, we're going to just have a little place where people can come who don't want to have anything to do with it. You see, we were vilified. We were demonized. That alone, right, should have been canary in the coal mine, that the road we were going down to is going to have nothing but bad consequences.
Right. Now, I happen to believe that a lot of Canadians, hopefully the majority, will think exactly as you and I do about this situation, that this is wrong, that this needs to be stopped. And you are actually now working on some initiatives to actually put some information into the hands of the people who have to make these decisions. So tell us a little bit about Archangel, D&E, some of the plans you're currently working on to put a stop to MAID in Canada.
Right. I mean, we have tremendous knowledge because we have lived this. We have lived this for the past 6 years. I personally, as a president of this organization, have lived it for the past 4 years, trying to navigate an organization through these kinds of troubled waters, seeing that the consequences of this on our nation will be horrendous. We know we're not going to get any support from local government, provincial government, federal government, because they all came after us when we said no thank you, right? So we know now that we're just going to have to go directly to the people, that we're going to have to develop tools to help protect people against MAID. When we hear stories like doctors now who are participating in MAID saying it's the most fulfilling work, it's so satisfying, like we know that there's a level of insanity that has gripped our nation, that the only ones that can stop it are people like us. Like, you know, we have got to give people tools. So we developed what we call the Do Not Euthanize Advance Directive, right? So we went to a lawyer, we got them drawn up for every province in Canada. And basically it says, I will not be euthanized. Don't talk to me about it, right? And we're saying in this moment that we want you to do everything you can to help me live well until my natural end. Like, none of us know if we're going to end up in the hospital tomorrow, to be quite honest. So, you know, we want to be prepared. There's a clause there, we call it Brandon's Clause, because of a man that we were involved with his situation, whereby the medical facility, and I'm not going to get into specifics here because we don't need to be sued, basically unilaterally decided to stop treating him. They turned off his oxygen, they turned off his nutrition, and they turned off his hydration, and they were just going to let him die. Now, yes, he had issues, for sure, but that was against what his family wanted. That was against what he wanted. So, you know, we have a clause in there called Brandon's Clause, which says, don't do that, because if you do, I give my people authorization to go after you for homicide. So we have the DNE. We will give the DNE to our members. Contact deltahospicesociety.org, 1-800-232-1589. This is a legally vetted advance directive, one for any province you live in. Get a hold of it. Membership is $10 for the year. Send us it. It's right on our website. You can order one. Okay? We'll send it to you. Now, this is something, right? This is something that we say to people, put this in your personal papers. Make sure it's very clear to your loved ones that you're not going to become another number. You're not to become another one of the 45,000 whose numbers are now going to exponentially increase, that you're just not going to be participating. So that's the first thing that we've done. The second thing that we've done, and look, we look at all these numbers and reasons why people are asking for MAID or being pressured, more likely, into MAID these days, right? And it isn't because they're suffering with such intense pain that's the only thing that's going to help, right? In fact, that's like the smallest percentage. The largest percentage is all around psychological reasons, about not wanting to be a burden, not wanting to be alone, being, now we're seeing things like just not being able to cope, quite frankly, with life, right? So look, people need support. See, now people are not eligible to get psychiatrists or sociologists or psychologists or they're not eligible, and if they were, they would take them years through the system. But they are eligible to be killed by MAID, and they're even eligible to be given a house call. Now, the MAID teams will go to your house and kill you, right? So, look, people need support. And we know that there are many people out there who are concerned about what's going on, concerned about their family members, concerned about their neighbors, their friends, right? So we have a program now called Guardian Angels. And Guardian Angels is a health advocate program where you can sign up with us if you want to basically, get in between somebody who's feels forced to ask for MAID and the agent of the state who's quite happy to provide it. And so Guardian Angels is meant to get in between that and to act as a advocate for somebody, to help them get these services that they need, to accompany them to even a doctor's appointment, right? That's going to sit with them and say, in the darkest hour, you don't need to take MAID, right? We can get through this. There are many, many instances where we have found all people need is a friend that they don't have in the moment. And so they become vulnerable to this killing that the state is, so eager to provide. So, that's what Guardian Angels is meant to do. And it was developed because we have seen so many cases where people just needed to step in on behalf of someone else, right? That needed to accompany them to the hospital so that they don't get sent in an Uber home. Because many of our clients, they go to the hospital because they need care, and they're put in an Uber and sent home to die. And there's nobody there to say, listen, my friend's not going home. My friend needs care. And we're going to be here all day until you accept them and give them care, right? But when you're sick and you're tired, or when you're depressed, when you don't think that you've got any energy left to fight another day, right? That's real. And that's where I say MAID has become predatory. And that's where you need somebody to stand with you, right? And say, you're my brother, you're not heavy. And we're going to stand here together and we're going to get you the help you need.
You almost need somebody to stand in between the bully and the person who's making that choice that they don't want to be making, like you said, because they can't afford to or this or that, but they don't really want to be there. But we need those guardian angels to be able to say, hey, there is another way. There are answers. There are services. There are people. Anything you need, we can essentially get you past this, right? Why isn't the government doing that? They just want them to die. So, I mean, this is like suicide prevention on a whole nother level that you guys are doing here, right?
Well, we are, right? Because we understand the pressure, right? We have withstood so much pressure, so much hatred, and everything that governments and activist groups could do to silence and destroy us. And we're here for a reason. We made it for a reason. And so, for us, it's about extending that hand, mobilizing people, putting them on the front line to help protect, our fellow citizens.
Yeah, our most vulnerable. Now, I know there are going to be people who are going to be watching this who are going to say, I need to get involved with this. Like, this is crazy. Canadian government's just flat out slaughtering people. This has to stop. I want to help. I want to get involved. What are some of the best things that people can do right now? Because you guys are pretty much the only ones leading the charge here to fight against MAID in Canada. So if there are Canadians watching this and they're like, I want to be involved in the fight against MAID, how do they get involved?
Yeah, you can help us. You can sign up on our website, deltahospicesociety.org. This is a nationwide program. We will train you. We have good friends in the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition, and Compassionate Community Care is another organization. The three of us, right? Like, we're basically the only ones talking about this stuff. And so, we have training programs in place. We will train you on how to talk to people. We will train you on how to identify elder abuse, right? We'll get you ready. We will support you. We will match you with somebody who needs you. So, this is pretty kind of revolutionary stuff we're talking about, right? But it's about, re-engaging people who have basically, at no fault of their own, abdicated responsibility to the government, because the government's going to take care of us, right? They're going to give us education, they're going to give us health care, everything's going to be great because we pay so much tax, so we should expect to get what we need. This is a different mindset. It's like, now we have to go back to a time when we didn't rely on the government for everything, right? That we got together as communities, right? Like-minded people. We found our friends, and we did things, and we achieved things. That's where we are now. And so, this is just one small way that we think we can get involved in that movement.
This is exactly that, a movement. This is what it should be, and we really need people to get involved, because as you've seen the numbers exponentially growing over the years since this started in 2016, and that's going to continue unless we continue to push back. So any final thoughts, just on this? It's been, It's been a pretty wild time since 2016, and it's been exponentially accelerating. Any final thoughts on where you think this needs to go in the very near future?
Look, the next couple of years, we are going to see. I fear for my people, right? I fear for my Canadian people, because the next couple of years we are going to see so many people opting for MAID. With that bill that just was defeated in the House for like don't kill depressed people, that wasn't even acceptable, right? Even if it had passed, I got to tell you that it wouldn't have passed through the Senate, because it was a senator's idea, to kill mentally ill people, right? So, we're gonna face a time in this nation where we got to come together. As far as I'm concerned, there is no other thing we can do except repeal Bill C-14 and C-7. Those were the things that allowed this thing called non-culpable homicide, right? We can't give the government that kind of power to kill its citizens. I always say, every despot in history would giggle and blush at how easily the Canadian people just accepted giving the state the ability to kill them. So, ultimately that has to go. That has to be repealed. We can't have that. But, in the meantime, if that never happens, then we have got to come together as a nation, right? It's about not allowing this cull that's going on. So it's going to mean, grassroots mobilization in terms of finding your friends, building communities, right? That's how we protect each other.
Well, I think working on that community aspect is going to be one of the most important things moving forward here when it comes to defeating MAID, because we're up against the behemoth here when it comes to the Canadian government and their program to slaughter people. So I really want to encourage everybody to definitely check those links in the description if you're interested in getting involved. And Angelina, I just want to thank you once again for the fight for life here in Canada. Just keep up the good fight, and on behalf of everyone in Canada, we really appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you so much.
We all want truth. The truth will set you free.